The late 1990s were a time of experimentation, especially with the rise of 3D gaming on consoles. One of the developers at the forefront of that experimentation and eventual revolution was none other than Squaresoft, the future Square Enix. Square's Final Fantasy franchise exploded in popularity during the PlayStation era, giving way to one of the most important tactical games of its time, Final Fantasy Tactics. Gamers have wanted Square to produce something just as masterful as Final Fantasy Tactics for years, after the sequels and ports also garnered grand praise. Though not one-to-one in terms of presentation, the Square Enix Landcars developed experience known as the DioField Chronicle seemed to be this generation's Final Fantasy Tactics by being nothing like it other than having a similar art design. After playing the demo that covers the game's first chapter, I was excited to experience the full release to see if the DioField Chronicle had the makings of being a classic herald for years to come by tactical gaming aficionados and even casual fans of the genre. While the narrative of the DioField Chronicle is anything but simple, the mission design and general combat structure becomes all too consistent and downright stagnant after the first couple of chapters. Players are tasked with organizing their team of 4 members known as the Blue Foxes, a mercenary group for hire to anyone including the rivaling governments looking to acquire the world's most precious resource, Jade. Taking them onto a battlefield where several mission objectives are presented, as well as optional stipulations usually involving completing said mission under 4, 6, or 8 minutes, opening a treasure chest during one of the major story missions, and not letting one of the Blue Foxes become incapacitated as the fight rages on. Successful completion of the aforementioned stipulations provide valuable gold, the in-game currency, skill points that are used to upgrade each class's specific combat abilities, and even jade fragments. There are dozens of missions to complete, including the obvious ones solely connected to the story, alongside several character-based side missions that either sees the protagonist talk to a character and initiate a combat-oriented side quest, or them simply talking for a short period of time that ends with the player being rewarded with a hefty sum of gold. After a little over 25 hours, I completed all the quests mostly on normal difficulty, bumping up the challenge to hard for added tension during the story's latter missions, even though hard difficulty only increases an enemy's damage output. Spending the next hour or so, I grinded the last 2 missions prior to the finale to increase a character's level to 50, earning all the game's trophies including the platinum. Considering the promotion behind the DioField Chronicle and how many assumed it would be something reminiscent to Final Fantasy Tactics, the DioField Chronicle is more XCOM instead, by abandoning the tile movement, turn-based gameplay style of Tactics and embracing a real-time battle system. Allies and enemies move across each battlefield with the prior being dictated by the player, unless the chosen fighters spot an adversary and go into auto-battle mode. There is the ability to pause the action though. By pulling up the skill menu for each playable character, everything will halt so the player can pick their intended ability to use, determine what enemy or enemies to target, and potentially do some math as every skill uses up EP. Beyond managing the Blue Fox's health and EP meters in battle is the ability to call upon summons thanks to the TP bar in the lower right hand corner of the screen. The TP bar fills up thanks to the more enemies the characters defeat, and the blue fragments dropped by the fallen enemies. There are 6 summons, with each having varied amounts of TP needed to be called upon, such as Bahamut, the first summon given, only needing 1 TP orb, while the HP and EP restorative focus Goldhorn requiring 2 TP spheres. Beyond summons and character skills, characters can perform automated regular attacks with certain Blue Foxes instinctively distancing themselves for long-range strikes if they are, say, a spellcaster or an archer. Customization and weapon management plays a huge role in the DioField Chronicle, mostly because weapons are responsible for what skills each character can use. The newest weapon for purchase may boost the attack power and effectiveness of certain skills, but may also replace a player's most used skill for another that may or may not have been upgraded via the skill tree. The game sports 4 main classes: Soldier, close and personal fighters who attack quickly but don't sport a great amount of health. Cavaliers, mounted tank-like combatants good at using skills for pushing enemies around the map. Sharpshooters, long-ranged attackers who can stun adversaries from afar to stop their area of effect charge attacks and even set up tripwires. And Magicers, spellcasters mastered in the art of offensive and defensive magic skills, including healing and sending down a hail of meteors respectively, and at least 2 variations of each class, soldiers using axes rather than daggers for heavier attacks while sacrificing speed, sharpshooters with rifles instead of bows for piercing damage even though trap skills are removed, magicers who focus on producing elemental shields to do damage to nearby enemies, and cavaliers riding on dragons instead of horses so they can unleash elemental attacks. With these variations, finding a definitive style is totally up to the player. Another interesting aspect about combat is the option to link secondary fighters to the main core team placed in combat. Via the Edit Unit menu, players can slot a character under the currently stationed fighter that gives the main blue fox whatever abilities the linked fighter has via their presently equipped weapon. This option essentially doubles the amount of skills and strategy a player can utilize once the fighting begins. With new characters being introduced throughout the story, players will have anywhere between 14 to 16 playable characters by Chapter 5. The fearful temptation to try them out in an important fray is greatly lessened, as this character link system will reduce the loss of character skills players have grown accustomed to during their playtime. The link system isn't class specific, and players can mix and match class abilities to their heart's content by, say, having a soldier linked to a sharpshooter. For all the options a player has both in preparation for combat and the actual art of battle, the DioField Chronicle suffers from several big problems, with the most obvious being the lacking difficulty, even when set to hard. One of the most prominent reasons for enemies falling so easily, even when completing the final mission, is the fact enemy variations pretty much peak halfway through the narrative, with once menacing bosses sporting multiple health bars, and no, say, evolutionary stages when one of those health bars are depleted, being reduced to large fodder. To complement the minuscule enemy types is no enemy level scaling connected to the Blue Fox's average level. Enemy levels are solely associated with the mission being completed, essentially foregoing the necessity for level grinding, thankfully, though you can replay missions to complete missed battle stipulations or get ahead in terms of leveling. Early in the game, this isn't necessarily a problem in terms of being challenged, but by the 3rd chapter it becomes almost impossible to lose, especially with the battle log implementation that allows for the player to return the battle to any checkpoint achieved. Checkpoints are usually activated after defeating a wave of enemies and a dialogue scene occurs. Players can switch out allies up to 3 times in battle, making it a lot easier to prevent a blue fox from being incapacitated. Another problem with enemies like gigantic demi-humans and animals is the lacking elemental properties. For example, the salamander foe is obviously a fire-based enemy. Instead of fire-based spells or skills being nullified or even restoring a salamander's health, fire attacks are just as effective as they would be against regular soldiers, with the enemy's level being the only dictating factor in regards to how much damage it takes from the player's attacks. A majority of the missions are in unique settings like snow-covered fields or sticky-looking swamps. There are no environmental hazards other than exploding barrels that cause a stunning blast if struck, and the stages themselves are nothing more than aesthetics instead of playing a role in how the battle plays out. For example, don't use lightning-based attacks near bodies of water if the blue foxes are close to said water. The way the DioField Chronicle plays out in the first 2 chapters from a gameplay perspective is mostly no different than what happens during missions throughout the entire narrative. Upgrades are both impressive and oppressive, with the latter being detrimental to the aforementioned difficulty. There are multiple upgrade avenues, including leveling up the overall Blue Fox unit. By providing financial backing to 2 particular characters in the overall hub, players unlock upgrades to the summons, as well as a weapons forging system. While upgrading summons is pretty straightforward, with a mixture of gold currency and jade fragments. Weapons forging not only needs material like gold bars earned through successful battle stipulations, but these crafted weapons have to be purchased at ridiculous prices compared to the amount of gold coins provided through completed missions. It isn't until late in the game will the player have enough money to buy the most expensive and impressive weapons, but most likely will only be able to do so for the four main characters consistently used in battle. While armor can't be forged, it too has some jaw-dropping prices associated with most pieces, and as expected, the cheaper versions are of not much benefit in the early chapters compared to the accessory quality increase around Chapter 4. Some side missions also upgrade the HQ's unit known as badges, including the eatery, so restorative items in battle are more effective, and slightly decreasing the item shop's prices. As noted, skills are class specific and can be upgraded via skill points earned by various means, be it completing those battle stipulations, leveling up the Blue Fox's unit, and simply whenever the game sees fit. Comparatively to skill points, ability points are dished out when a character levels up, one ability point after every leveling, and are directly connected to that character. Personal character abilities range from spending a single AP to upgrade a character's attack power by 2%, to spending 10 ability points to guarantee a fallen enemy drops a restorative health orb if that adversary is slain by the character with such an ability. Though some character-specific abilities are exactly the same for certain classes, a majority of these abilities help differentiate each Blue Fox when war begins. The story of the DioField Chronicle starts off well enough, mostly seeing the story from the perspective of Andreas Ronderson, an orphan-turned-royal bodyguard who is a master of ancient sorcery. The player is introduced to a war-torn continent, with the island of DioField housing the precious jade resource that the growing empire wants to secure after pushing back the forces of the Alliance. The kingdom of Alatane controls both DioField and the jade, which is detrimental in utilizing magic both modern, like that used by the Empire, and ancient in the case of Alatane. With the Empire setting its sights on the Jade, and in turn the Kingdom of Alatane, the Kingdom organized Blue Fox's mercenary group are put to the task of preventing DioField from being taken over. What comes from this narrative are some significant conflicts and developments, including off-screen deaths of major power players, fellow Blue Foxes including the rather sadistic Walter Quinn reaching a new level of understanding their abilities, and multiple deals being made behind the backs of those who should be in the know about everything happening on the battlefield and behind conference room doors. Though there are a bunch of characters introduced, including those who are playable, very few get significant screen time. The aforementioned Andreas and Walter Quinn are joined by Frederick Lester and Issacharian Colchester as characters who are both shown off as key members of the Blue Foxes and their thought processes on rising tensions between commoners and nobles, with Frederick being adamant that democracy is an example of a failed government, while Issacharian disagrees. The voice acting leaves something to be desired, as a majority of the cast sounds like they're about to fall asleep or come across as otherworldly, though the latter makes a lot more sense considering some of the story's developments. The story's biggest issue is arguably the ending. Beyond the overall surprising nature, the ending works as a gateway to a sequel not yet known will occur. The fates of several important characters and plot threads are unresolved, or left to the player's imagination without the knowledge of whether or not they will be answered. From a technical aspect, the game is a mixed bag. Beyond some of the previously mentioned gameplay woes are unexplainable issues like the game auto-selecting Blue Foxes to move or open up their skill menu even if the player has the cursor on another active character. When moving the foxes, path lines are shown as well as the sight lines and sight circles of nearby enemies. The AI will at times move a Blue Fox right in the enemy sight circle even if the path line was meant to take them elsewhere, potentially ruining a plan like setting up an ambush attack, as hitting an enemy from behind produces more damage in the form of an ambush. Battle speed can be increased up to 2 times the normal speed. The audio and general music selection, though light in terms of amount, is fitting at every moment and sounds fantastic. There are some odd dialogue presentation choices, including full voice sections followed by the same characters either saying a few words or making a sound, while the player has to read a portion of dialogue. Character models, both during gameplay and cutscenes, could be more associated with something from 2 gaming generations ago rather than a 2022 release, though problems such as frame rate drops and hard crashes are non-existent. The addition of New Game Plus is ineffectively implemented. Everything from equipment to character levels carry over in New Game Plus, but enemy scaling doesn't happen to complement the mode, nor do the mission level requirements change. There are no extra abilities, characters, or even an extended ending from finishing the game via New Game Plus. Meaning New Game Plus is essentially a different version of Practice Battle, where you can replay any previously completed mission via a specific table located in the headquarters. The DioField Chronicle really feels synonymous with the story's ending, a release showing great potential from a gameplay perspective, but coming up short in nearly every area with the intent of expansion in a sequel. What could have been a revolutionary experience that welcomed both non-strategy gamers and veterans of the genre into a magical world, setting a standard second to none, is simply the foundation for something that hopefully is greater in almost every way if a sequel comes into fruition. While the initial hours may seem overwhelming in the beginning of something truly remarkable, the DioField Chronicle settles down into a repetitive series of events, both in terms of gameplay and even the narrative, as it builds toward a finale that is anything but conclusive. Does that mean the DioField Chronicle is underwhelming? Not in the most profound ways, but definitely not the once-in-a-generation experience many believed it would be, considering the source and how well the first chapter sets up evolutionary tactics needed to find success in combat. The story is good, but the ending, though shocking, only gives the player so much in terms of satisfaction, as the developers went a route based on the idea of this being the first installment of who knows how many iterations, due to the lacking combat progress, non-conclusive story, and general easiness on hard difficulty. It's hard to give the DioField Chronicle a recommendation at full price, but if you're a fan of the genre, definitely check out the demo, and then pick it up when it's either on sale or the price drops about $20. No matter how disappointing certain aspects of the DioField Chronicle are, including non-reached potential, there are very few things more enjoyable than beating a big-mouth noble or a shiesty thief into the ground.
So, you were here after all, Zachariah.
I don't recall inviting any foxes to my domain.
Really? You made so little effort to conceal your plotting, I thought you wanted us to come.
Huh? I'll teach you some manners.
I owe you for last time, you know. Oh, I'm going to have so much fun with you. So you'd better enjoy yourself while you can.
Enough of your prattle. This ends here.
You think you can escape?
You're not going anywhere.
I'll show you what I'm made of.
Right away.
Next time.